Chris, let's get back to the Isley's catalog a bit. What would you say are some of your personal favorites and why?
Well, we mentioned the Heat Is On album. That's one of my personal favorites, for the reasons that I said, how it took the group to a whole nother level. And also we were the only musicians on that record. That was the beginning of the plus three being the total musical force for the group. And there's all original material too. So that one will always stand out for that reason. Caravan of Love has to be one of the biggest stands out too, because of what it was for the younger members of the band. Me, in particular, I sang it and wrote it and all of that stuff and played almost everything on there but the guitar. And it was like a first, for the younger members, #1 record. So I think for many different reasons, those two albums will always kind of stand out with the career with the groups,
I always found it curious, and so did other fans of mine, that so many of the songs back then, you would always say there were parts 1 and 2. What was the thinking behind that? And, we would try to figure out where did part 2 begin and part 1 end.
Yeah. Well, generally, if a song went over a certain time, a certain length, you remember when they made 45s, you couldn't get too much on one side. So if it was a long song, you'd have to finish it on side B. So if it was I think it was over 4 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that. If it was more than that, it would be a part 2, So that's why they would label part 1 and part 2, because of length, because we usually had a long end section to Live It Up. The end section after the verses was longer than the verses. That lady was like that. We had Who's That Lady at first, and then it went into the instrumental thing, So it was because of the length of the songs that we had part 1 and 2.
Was there a sense that toward the early 80s that you were kind of running out of steam a little bit? Could you just talk about what was kind of going on at that time, and what, if any, sort of creative differences there might have been happening that caused Isley-Jasper-Isley to spin off and Ronald to do his thing, and what happened at that time?
Well, in 1980, the Go All the Way album, that was supposed to be the first Isley-Jasper-Isley album, actually. The group was having problems then. But then we decided to stay together, so it became an Isley Brother album. But there were things happening within the group. Financial problems were the biggest ones. But then there were creative differences too. And in particular, there were some songs and that were done that were really written. I wrote them for myself, actually, and I felt I should have sang them, but there was a resistance from the older brothers. You know what I mean? And I felt that was hurting the material, and it did hurt the material. I really started to see us as a group that could be like the OJs or the Temptations, where you had 2 lead singers, and they each, did justice to the song that they were singing. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, having Eddie Kendricks sing My Girl. It may have been good, but it wouldn't be the same. You know what I mean? And that's what I was getting from some of our songs during that period after 1980, which is probably why there was a little, little drop off. Some songs weren't really written for him, for Ronald. And I think that was the creative thing that was happening. And I think the group was hurt by that a little bit. Because a lot of groups had 2 lead singers. But I think the older guys for so long, you know, Ronald sang everything for so long, they felt he should sing everything. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of what was happening creatively. But the financial thing was the thing that finally broke the group up. You know, it was just, you know, they had the IRS problems and taxes, and they never would take care of it right. And it was just impossible for us to stay together as 6 members.
Well, it's a shame, but, you know, everything has to come to an end eventually, I guess. But, you know, as an outsider looking in, you know, I mean, this was the album that was it for me. It's one of my all-time favorites by anybody. It's just from start to finish. I'll stack it up with any album by anyone. And, you know, this one and Showdown in particular, you know, it's when I was in high school, so, but it particularly hit a note with me. And, you know, again, from an outsider looking in, I felt that, you know, the Winner Takes All album, some great stuff, but not as consistent all the way through, being a double album, and then Go All the Way. You know, on that one, the slow material seemed to be a little stronger than, and the funk songs were not quite on the same level as what had preceded. And to me, as far as the Isley's catalog goes, I think it was The Real Deal. That album brought it back to kind of a level that I thought you had with Go With the Guns, or Go For Your Guns. And to me, that was like the last great, you know, Between the Sheets notwithstanding is a great song, but that album from beginning to end to me was the last great Isley's album. How do you feel about all that?
Yeah, it's like, you know, each one of those albums has a certain thing that I like about it. You know what I mean? But it's what's difficult as a songwriter with other people in the group, you know, who are not songwriters. Like the older guys, they were not songwriters. You know, they weren't writing the stuff. And me and Ernie were. And to try to get them to do what you want them to do sometimes is difficult. You know what I mean? It's hard. It's hard. Some of those sessions were like pulling teeth. You know, sing it this way. Do this, do that. You know, no, do this phrase, do that phrase. You know what I mean? And it was like, it sounds easy once it's finished, you know, but it wasn't easy, you know. And that's why I like the freedom of being able to do my own music, because I can do it like it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? I know, like some of those phrases. I was talking to my wife in the car the other day, and Between the Sheets came on, and I said, "Wow, that's another phrase I had. That was pretty hard for getting Ronald to do." Mm-hmm. Ooh, baby, feel your love surrounding me. Ooh, oh, oh, ooh. You know, those phrases. Those are my phrases. I sang them first, and I was telling him, "Hey, do this, do that." You know what I mean? But it was hard. But it sounds, you know, like it was easy though, right? But see, the point I'm making is, I wrote a lot of stuff, and a lot of those phrases are my phrases and stuff, and people don't realize it until they hear my current stuff, and they say, "Hey, man, you know, you and Ronald sound similar a lot of times." But I said, "Hey, we like the same guy, Sam Cooke." That's why it was easy for me to write with Ronald, because I was a big Sam Cooke fan from a kid this high. I used to sing Sam Cooke music all the time. So it's like when I started to write, I said, "Hey, he likes that kind of thing too. So hey, I can craft a melody like this." You know what I mean? And it worked perfectly. But the point I'm making is, a lot of those songs in that era, like Love Merry-Go-Round and It's All Right With Me, and so I was supposed to sing that whole song. You know, it had a different feel to it. I have a little kind of rougher thing in my voice sometimes. You know, that's kind of like a little more like soulful, like in a way. You know, and Ronald's voice is higher pitched, and so some of the songs were crafted for a more, you know, soulful kind of thing to happen. You know, I know that you always need a lover. You know, the more soul thing, not a nice little thing. You're talking about a love triangle. You know, how are you gonna be nice about that? You know,
yeah, right.
You know what I'm trying to say? And that's I was really mad about that song because it sounded like a top 40 smash when I sang it. And then they just had Ronald sing the verses. I was like, for what? It's finished. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. I think that's why the material suffered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can imagine the stuff that, you know, Eddie Levert sang for the OJs, if you took him off of the song, why? You know, and I didn't know of it. I think it was, like I said, I think it was, you know, them resisting what they were seeing too in the concerts, because I was singing the shows that people would go crazy. I mean, actually crazy, right? And then, okay, oh, you know what? Put that on the record? Huh?
Well,
you know, that's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. It stopped being the music.
Yeah.
And when it stops, when you stop listening to the music, what the music is telling you, then it's time to quit. See, because something else is going on. When you hear a song like that come back on the speakers, and you say, "Oh, we got to change something," then it's like it's not the music anymore. You see, it's something else, and that's when it's time to say, "Okay, let's go. It's enough."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened with the Isley Brothers.
Well, and Chris, hearing, you know, your solo work, and, you know, hearing, you know, all those identifiable elements, and, you know, also I got to say on Ernie's only solo album, Highwire, you know, could hear it in that too. And I was surprised when that came out because I didn't even know Ernie could sing at all.
He sang some of IGI stuff, you know, when Isley-Jasper-Isley was together, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wish
Ernie laid down the guy tracks too, you know. Ronald just copied, you know, what he sang, and then when I would sing, I would lay down guy tracks. He would just copy the same thing. That's how we made the records. That's how we did them so fast. You know what I mean? Because Ronald didn't have to search for a melody or search. He didn't have to search for many ad libs. What seemed to be ad libs were in the song. Wow. You know what I mean? They were crafted within the melody. You didn't have to search for anything. All I had to do was just do it. That was the thing, do it. And hey, I mean, you know, Caravan was like, that's why Caravan was so big. It's because, to me, okay, it was like, this is what I wanted the Isley Brothers to do.
Well, in our last few minutes, Chris, let's talk a little bit more about Isley-Jasper-Isley and also your solo work. You know, when you guys went off on your own, that Broadway's Closer to Sunset Boulevard, you know, I saw that. I was looking forward to, you know, you guys branching off on your own because, you know, for me, the Isleys were just starting to favor too much of the mellow stuff, and I'm more of an up-tempo, funky guy, and also, you know, the rock side of it. So I saw that you guys came out bold. You had that, you know, cover with standing there with your instruments, and you were going to conquer the world. But then, you know, the material was a lot more varied than I was kind of anticipating. And so, can you speak to you know, how that came to be and what you were thinking and looking to do at that time?
I think from Ernie's standpoint, I think he wanted to try to, you know, do something that was kind of top 40-ish, like, you know, that would maybe, like we alluded to earlier, crossover, you know. So I think that first album had those elements of, you know, some top 40 and rock in it, you know, and that came from Ernie's perspective, you know, basically. There's one song I did that was kind of a top 40 song on there too. Love's Gonna Last Forever. It was kind of a ballad, you know, but it was a ballad, you know, and Serve You Right, that was more, you know, like me. That was my idea. But it was a variety of different types of songs on that first album. And that's why when we did Caravan, I really called a meeting. I said, you know, you guys should come up to the house. I want to talk to you about, you know, this next album. I said, we've got to get back to, you know, our roots, you know, what people expect, you know, to hear when they hear music from us, you know, and it's got to be soulful, you know what I mean? And Caravan and Insatiable Woman, you know, were two of my ideas that I said, here, you know, we should do things like this. You know what I mean? And it wasn't even finished yet. The song wasn't really finished yet, but you know, the groove was there. And that was, I consciously wanted to get back to soul when I did Caravan. And yeah, it was different from the first Broadway album. It was different. And it was consciously different. I made that point. I said, we got to get back to soul, singing soul, man. That's it.
Well, to me, that's the most fully realized IJI album for sure. I mean, from beginning to end, it's just really cohesive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not only the hit, but I mean, just throughout.
Yeah, yeah. The music is just, yeah. And I Can Hardly Wait was another song on it. You know, it got a lot of play of R&B stations, you know. But again, it was a soul song, you know. So
I noticed you had worked with Chaka Khan a little bit later in the decade, and how did that come to be? And who are some other folks that you've worked with that maybe not everyone would even know about?
Well, I was in the same studio that she was recording in up in Connecticut when I was doing. I had just done the Super Bad album, just kind of finished it off. She was coming in, and I met a producer, and we were talking, you know, and I said, yeah, I just finished an album and blah, 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 you know, and he goes, hey, but he said, do you think you have a song for Chaka, you know, because she's looking for, you know, more material. She's not finished her album yet, because I think they did some other songs in another studio, and then they were coming to this studio. And I said, well, yeah. I said, I think I have something. So then I went home, you know, and you know, and then came back and kind of start laying the tracks for Make It Last, you know. And that's kind of how that got going. And then when I finished the track, you know, I sang some background on there with her, you know, and that was really great experience working with somebody like her, because she, you know, she could really sing, and she can play drums, which I didn't know. she could really play drums too. But anyway, that was a really good experience. And I've worked with, you know, artists that I had on my own label, you know, like Brothers by Choice, out front, Liz Hogue, another great singer, but you know, she had something on the Gold City label. Now I'm working with my son Michael, and he's working on product. He's in law school, so he's got to juggle between recording and all his work he has, but he should be coming out with something soon. But you know, most of the things I do though are my solo projects. I've gotten comfortable, you know, working solo, and I'm very, very happy with what I'm producing. I mean, right now my song "I Love You," which is a single from the latest album, is topping the charts over there in England. It just reached #1 on one of the charts. Yeah, just #1 on one of the charts on the, and on the soul chart, it's #4. Went from 14 to #4. So it's really, really doing well there. And we're promoting it here in the States too. We're starting to get, you know, some stations on it. But this album has a lot on it. You know, it's got 2 covers on it, and it's got some funk on it. It's got, you know, ballads, of course, always ballads, because that's one of my strong points. That's one of the strong points I've always done, is ballads. And very happy with the response that the people to give. All the reviews that they give it is great.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it. It's kind of like 2 halves in a way. You know, the beginning and first half is more mellow and ballady, and then the second half kind of gets funky and a little more varied. And so did you intend to sequence it that way?
Yeah, I wanted to start off with the How Great Thou Art, because it's such a statement. And, you know, like my relationship with God is a very big part of who I am. That's who I am. So if I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna start off with that. And it was a really, I think it was a really, really good version of it. You know, the energy in it and the whole thing. I mean, it was a great spiritual experience for me doing that record. So I was saying to my wife, I said, you know what? And we were trying to figure out the sequence. I said, you know what? Start off with that one, you know, because why wait for that? Just put it on the front and then just let everything else flow. And the You Are So Beautiful, I thought that arrangement went really well. Because she encouraged me to do both of those, by the way. Because she said, you did all those other arrangements, Hello Is Me and, Don't Let Me Be Lonely in the Night and all that stuff. And she's like, why don't you do something with these two songs? She's like, because she liked that You Are So Beautiful. And my mother and her liked that hymn, How Great Thou Art. So I said, we'll see what I can do with them, and I'm really glad I did, because it added something else that wasn't on the previous album, that cover element and arrangement and all that, and how You Are So Beautiful ends, with the back to the R&B, kind of groove at the end. And I just like a lot of the things that happen on this album musically.
Well, I've been enjoying it for sure. Chris, what was it like when you got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame back in '92? Can you tell me what that meant to you, what the experience was like, and as you're in this stage of your career and life, how do you reflect back upon things?
Well, I remember at the time I was surprised to hear from the Academy. I was very surprised, and the whole affair was very nice. It was done at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. Lots of press. They had like a press room, and I think everybody that had a camera was there. It was like a huge room with nothing but cameras. And, that was before the ceremony began. You had the press conference. And I think any artist who wanted to show up, could show up and, give a short interview. And they had, they took pictures and stuff. And it was even a video. It was like a news thing that came on television too. They showed it on the stations. And I always remember the amount of press that was there, and I was impressed by that. But then, the ceremony was great too. Little Richard brought us up and presented, us on the stage, and that was after the breakup too, the group breakup, and it was funny. I had mixed emotions, on one hand, this great honor, but then on the other hand, still distance between, the members of the group, you know what I mean? And it was kind of a mixed emotions, but I have that in a very special place in my house, that trophy, because it is special, to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I donated some things there. I donated the Liberation that you mentioned, on the album cover that I was standing there with on the Broadway album. Mm-hmm. I donated that Moog Liberation to the Hall of Fame, and also that outfit I was wearing. Those are both in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
You sure you don't want to wear that around the house anymore?
No way I can get into that again. Oh, the boots also.
Perfect.
I even donated the boots. Yeah. So yeah, that's all in the Cleveland there. If you want to go by there.
So as we wind this down, Chris, what can we expect from you moving forward? Are you doing any live shows? And also, if you do live shows, do you do any of the Isley tunes?
I would definitely do Isley tunes. Yeah. Go back and do some of the old stuff, and then do some of the new stuff, and then probably close it out with Caravan, Caravan of Love and stuff from that album. I would do material from all the different times in my career. And yeah, I want to do that. I want to start doing some live shows. But then I'm also doing a score for a movie that my son wrote too. So we're working on finishing that music. Been doing a lot of recording and some scoring here and there, and then but in the future I know I'm going to have more ideas because that's just who I am. I'm a composer and I get ideas, so I'll be working on new material too. When it'll come out, I'm not sure, but I'm working on new material.
Well, I think I speak for a lot of fans when I say, keep on doing it, man. Don't stop.
Yeah, can't stop the flow.
So is there anything else you'd like to add? Where can people, get more Chris Jasper information, access the CD?
Yep, chrisjasper.com. Just that simple. All the music stores are in there, iTunes, CD Baby, and, Amazon, all that stuff. And everything I'm doing, you can get to Facebook, Twitter, all through chrisjasper.com. So.
Well, that seems easy enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, it's time to wrap up this episode of Truth and Rhythm. A big thanks again to my very special guest, Mr. Chris Jasper, and also sincere thank you to our viewers. Chris, thank you so much.
Oh, sure. My pleasure.
Be sure to look out for other episodes of Truth and Rhythm. Catch up on previous installments at funkinstuff.net or on YouTube. And for now, this is Scott Goldfine once again saying, keep on vibrating to the rhythm of the one.